evening and welcome to KTN Prime on the 16th day of April 2019. My name is James Marks.
I'm Nida Butu. Let's take a look at some of the top stories that we're covering for you tonight. And the Supreme Court has released the reasons that informed the verdict delivered on 30th March on the presidential election petition. In a 115-page document, the judges extensively explained the arguments and counter-arguments from both sides, plus what they considered in making their ruling. Sophia Wanuna now joins us from our newsroom. Sophia, what informed this decision?
Good evening, Linda. Smart indeed today, after 16 days, when the Supreme Court judges on the 30th of March released the verdict. Today, then, they gave the reasons that informed that verdict. Of course, they showed up in the Supreme Court a few minutes past 10 a.m. It was widely expected that perhaps the judgment would be read out, or at least the highlights of that judgment. But that did not happen. They came into the courtroom, they appended their signature on the 115-page judgment, and of course the ruling, or rather the judgment as well, was certified by the Supreme Court registrar as well, making it an official Supreme Court judgment. And I went through that judgment, and this is some of the things I picked out on what it highlights, of course, away from what we already know the court had ruled on the 30th of March. Let's take a listen. In determining the consolidated presidential election petition, the Supreme Court judges said that the Constitution guided their decision. In a 115-page judgment, the judges explained reasons for the verdicts given on the 4 key issues before them. The 6 judges, in explaining their guiding principle, said that the petitioners had the initial burden of proof on the allegations before the court. However, they did not execute that burden as to persuade the judges to grant them their prayers. The Supreme Court has original and exclusive jurisdiction in a presidential election. This was not an issue of contention in the hearings. But in the ruling, the judges highlighted that its jurisdiction is limited in extent, saying that it can only make inquiry into the relevant legal, factual and evidentiary questions in the presidential petition, and would not adjudicate on issues raised by petitioners but fall in the jurisdiction of other lower courts. The Mutunga-led court also cited time as another limitation, which informed their move to disallow 3 applications during the pre-hearing conference, maintaining the importance to adhere to outlined constitutional timelines. On the issue of technology in the electoral process, the court was of the opinion that upon failure of the electronic machinery during the election, the IEBC had no option but to revert to the manual system. However, the court said that different reasons explaining the failure of the electronic voter identification devices and results transmission system, according to a statement by IEBC's ICT manager Dismas Ongondi, mainly arose from the misunderstandings and squabbles among IEBC members during the procurement process. Squabbles which occasioned the failure to assess the integrity of the technologies in good time. The judges say it is likely that the acquisition process was marked by competing interests involving impropriety or even criminality. The judges recommended the matter be entrusted to the relevant state agency for further investigation and possible prosecution of suspects. They also recommended that the IEBC set up a backup system for the principal voter register, the Green Book. The Supreme Court also laid to rest what kind of a fresh election would be held if a petition challenging the election was successful. As Attorney General Githu Muigai, in his submissions as a friend of the court during the hearings, sought the court's clarification. If the petition is filed by one or more of the presidential candidates in the original election, the fresh election would be a contest between the petitioner or petitioners and the president-elect. But if the successful petition is filed by a person who was not a candidate in the election, then all the presidential candidates in the original election would be eligible to participate. However, no new nominations would be conducted. The judgment will be published by the National Council for Law Reporting and the Judicial Training Institute. Sophia Wanuna, KTN. All right, so there you have it, some of those highlights that will be seen in that 115-page judgment. And the judges also did say that in conclusion, or rather they concluded that in fact the March 4th election was in no way perfect, but that there was no evidence presented to them that proved that there were massive, profound irregularities, and therefore they upheld the election, or rather the announcement of Uhuru Kenyatta as president alongside his deputy Linda.
Sophia, of course, they maintained that the March 4th general election was in no way perfect, but did they talk about the electoral process, sort of give recommendations for future elections?
It does not give recommendations on future elections, but what it does clearly say, as I read out to one of those recommendations in regard to the procurement of the BVR kits and the other electronic equipment that were used during the election, they said that needs to be looked into. Of course, it's not in their mandate to rule on that, and also really the other processes like the voter registration exercise. One of the things the judgment does highlight, and the judges say that the IEBC needs to clean that out, because they noted that the Green Book, which was the principal entry of the data for the various voters, did not have a backup system. So things like those need to be cleared and ironed out in the next 5 years or so as we head to the next election, Linda.
Sophia, many thanks for giving us an insight on that story. Of course, you remember Sophia covered this whole process for us, from the voting to the tallying process and up to the moment where the winner was declared by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. And of course, that story forms the basis of our big question tonight. Smart.
Indeed. And tonight we're asking you a big question. Do you agree with the Supreme Court's reasoning for dismissing Court's petition? Do you agree with the Supreme Court's reasoning for dismissing Court's petition? Send your yes or no responses with brief comments to the number 8040. Linda and I will sample your views during this live newscast and give you that for results at the end of this bulletin.